Hi, this is Virginia Nava, and I'm here with Eric Atwood. And I'm really, really excited to be here with you, with Eric today, because I know Eric for several years, and we have collaborated in many projects together. And I have participated in his work. And he has a lot of talents and a lot of work. And I want you to kind of really be able to have an opportunity to meet him and really see how his work can be life-changing and transformational. And the reason why is because the work he does, he refers to it as relational presence. Um, it is really important, and it's really important in all areas of life. So whether you're an executive and you're in leadership positions, and it's important for you to have the influence and connection with your employees and investors and other people, or whether you're a mom or a dad that is really looking to relate to their family more lovingly, or you are an entrepreneur who is they're trying to share their own voice and ideas. The way in which we relate to those who we serve is so important. And the way in which Eric does his work and the knowledge he has using techniques from the speaking circles, as well as his own ability to have relational presence, as well as his own books that he's written about life, is really transformational. And it brings a new perspective. And instead of speaking to someone, you really start speaking with someone. So here I'm relating to you what he does, but it's more important that you learn from him and his story, and you learn from his own words, like what his work is all about. And I hope that this interview really starts helping you in your own life. And the first question I want to do to Eric is first welcome him here and say, hey, thank you, Eric, for being here today.
Thank you, Virginia. It's a pleasure. And yeah, the way you described my work was great. I don't think I could have done a better job.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I can share a lot more if you like.
Yeah, well, I guess the first question I have is, if you are able to share your transformational story, I think it would be amazing, because I don't think people will be able to see who you were before to who you are now. And that in itself, to me, it's amazing.
All right, great. Yeah, 15 years ago or so, I was quite different than I am now, especially in terms of my ability to express myself and my ability to relate to people. I feel a lot more comfortable, less self-conscious, and just more confident, I suppose, than I was. Because for about 40 years, I was a very shy and withdrawn person. So I was very self-conscious about myself and was very worried about what other people thought of me. So it was hard for me to have real conversations with people or share my feelings or really be present in a conversation. And that's has nothing to do even with public speaking. I wouldn't even be comfortable speaking with one person, let alone a lot of people. So my transformation really began about 15 years ago. It was a period of my life where I knew I wasn't happy, and I needed to shift a lot of things. And the first thing I had to shift was right up here. My beliefs in myself, or overall limiting beliefs about life and the world, and including myself, were just keeping me stuck and unhappy. So I had to shift my mindset first, and then I started taking different actions. So it was about a 5-year period in my life. I call it my personal development years, where I started to shift how I was thinking and approaching things and then acting in my life. And one of the things I found in that 5-year period was speaking circles. So this is a technique that was started decades ago. And I found it, I was living in New Zealand going through this period of my life. And I found one person in New Zealand who was doing speaking circles. And I immediately fell in love with this work. It is a public speaking teaching, but it also teaches people how to be comfortable in all kinds of interactions and relationships. And so you mentioned relational presence. That's the practice we teach in speaking circles. In a group setting, it's about being with one person at a time, just being very present with one person instead of scanning an audience or looking above their heads. You're just very present with each person, and you're not really thinking so much about what you're saying because you're not doing a speech or a performance. You're simply being authentic and in the moment with people. And so this practice helped me overcome my shyness, for lack of a better term. And I started to relate to different people in a different way. I started to feel really comfortable in my own skin. I started to express what was true for me, sharing from my heart, and also really listening and feeling this really strong connection with people. So speaking circles and relational presence really shifted the way I interact, and it changed my relationships too. And it also changed my perspective about myself and my, I guess, purpose in the world. And so I did speaking circles, and I eventually became trained as a facilitator in this work. And now that's what I teach. So I do speaking circles and I do coaching, teaching people how to use these techniques in public settings or delivering presentations, that sort of thing. And I also do group training, workshops and training for companies to be able to communicate and collaborate in a more effective way using these practices. So that's sort of the journey I've been on the last 15 years, and I have a great passion for this work. And one of the great things about it is you actually see the results. You talk about transformation. I've seen so many instances of people transforming right in front of my eyes in a speaking circle or in a workshop, where they start to open up because they feel heard and they're using these practices, and you can sense this connection with people. And maybe for the first time, they felt comfortable speaking in front of a group. That to me is transformation. That can be life-changing. It did change the way I interacted, and now I'm showing people and giving them tools and guidance on how they can do it for themselves. And so it changes the way they interact with family, friends, people they meet for the first time, colleagues at work, the way they do public talks or presentations. So it has a widespread array of benefits for people. So I'll stop for now because, I felt like it was a little bit of my story, but also how these practices help people really interact and present themselves in an authentic and powerful way.
Thank you, Eric. I feel like it's really inspirational. And to me, until I attended your events, I was able to really understand what it was to be with somebody instead of being, talking to someone. And to me, that was really important. One of the things that it was surprising to me that it was different from, say, another type of a speaking training is that there was kind of more connection with the heart, and then also more connection with the audience. And I felt that through this process, I started learning to listen more, which I didn't anticipated that. I anticipated that I was learning to speak where, I'm just speaking to somebody. So there is this aspect of relational presence that I experience as speaking and listening. And it's maybe the person is not necessarily speaking, like you're speaking to somebody and they're not saying anything back to you, but there's also this non-verbals, right, that the audience is having as you are speaking. So can you kind of express a little bit more like this difference between a traditional methodology of speaking and the way in which relational presence is different, as well as the technique of speaking circles?
Yeah, sure. There are other public speaking teachings or techniques, if you will. Toastmasters is one of the standard ones, it's sort of the bellwether in the public speaking teaching industry, if you will. And speaking circles is quite different. I won't go into comparisons because there's a lot of value in Toastmasters and other teachings. And in speaking circles, unlike other teachings, it's a very spontaneous technique, and it's not doing a speech or a performance or preparing material in advance. What we're teaching is how to have a relationship with your audience, or as we say in speaking circles, a group of listeners. So it's a person in front of a group of listeners, and that person is in a very open space where they're just being with people and noticing what's coming through them. And you mentioned nonverbal communication. That's a big part of how we convey messages, information, and connect with people non-verbally, right? So eye contact, our posture, hands, there's a lot of nonverbal signals that are giving off information to people. And so when you're comfortable in front of a group, you're conveying a lot of information. Some of it's verbal, a lot of it's nonverbal. And so this practice of simply being in front of a group and just noticing the connection you have and allowing things to happen very organically. So you're not thinking too much and you're not preparing any content. And the other thing there I'll say is it's not as much about content as it is about connection. So rather than coming in front of a group and saying, I have to impress this group, or I have to educate them, or I have to take them through a process, or I have to inspire them, or I have to tell them a story, do anything for your audience. In speaking circles, we reverse the dynamic so that the listeners are not expecting anything from you. The listeners, and you mentioned listening too, it's to me the most important aspect of speaking circles and of communication of any kind, is being a good listener. So important. But we give guidance for listeners to really be available to a person who's in front of the group. For one thing, that helps them feel safe and comfortable, right? Because they're not expecting anything of you. They're allowing you to share whatever you want, be in relationship with the audience, with the listeners, and show just deep appreciation for that person, right? Without analyzing, without judging, without critiquing. So those are some of the things that happen in Toastmasters, because you're doing a speech in Toastmasters and people are correcting you. But as long as you follow simple guidelines in speaking circles, you can't do anything wrong. So people are really just there listening, showing you appreciation, allowing you to be however you want. And you can be in silence, and you can share, like if you're nervous, or you can, whatever's coming up for you, we invite you to be in the moment and just be with what's true for you and allow things to happen naturally with and without words. And so the listeners really make that possible. It makes it, the person up front feels very safe and heard and appreciated. And so that's when true authenticity and some amazing things can happen in that space, when people feel like they're just being allowed to be themselves and being appreciated for exactly that. Like they don't have to do anything for anybody else. They can just be in the moment and just notice what's happening and allow words and whatever feelings or whatever expression, verbal and nonverbal, are wanting to come through in a particular time with a particular group of people.
I love that. And I love what you said about being about connection. And I feel that that's one of the things that I really experience when I'm participating in your speaking circles. I experience connection. I also experience opportunity for diversity. And because everybody comes with their own perspective, and then you are able to have an experience of somebody else's life for a few minutes that you may not otherwise have, and that you may not have access to that person or that environment, right? Because we're so selective in our environments and our life that sometimes we don't get that diversity in our everyday life. So one of the things I found with the speaking circles is that opportunity to relate to a wider audience. And I wanted to ask you, the workshops we've done together in the past, you have given some exercises for people to start practicing relational presence in their life. And I wanted to see if maybe you can share one or two that maybe an executive can take into their meeting, or a parent can take into their household, or even to a friend, or our intimate relationships. Because I believe it's one of those, like, that I feel that sometimes we dismiss this because it's like presence, right? Like, okay, what is presence? Okay, be in the present moment. And then it could be like, yeah, whatever. But then when you ask yourself, okay, were you in the present moment today, or were you in your head? So it's kind of like yoga, right? Or meditation. How much do you really sit on the mat and actually listening in, right? Like, how much do we do that? So it is not as easy as it sounds, right? It requires some discipline and some practice. So I would love for you to share kind of an example of that, because that way somebody can take it home and realize how much more they need to grow in this.
Mm. Yeah. There's certainly a lot that goes into effective communication. I won't go into all of the things, or even a lot of the things that we do in speaking circles, but I can highlight a few practices or techniques that are really helpful to build connection and to feel connection with people, and to also build trust and have a sense of we're just two human beings interacting here. It might be a business setting, it might be a social setting, it might be somebody that you know very well. There's all kinds of relationships and sort of dynamics or energies that are exchanged. And when one or both people are using these practices, it can create an amazing type of connection and interaction where a conversation can go amazing places, because both people are feeling this connection, but also using practices that enhance the dynamic, and allow things to happen naturally. So a few of those things, one of them would be eye contact. In some cultures, eye contact may not be as welcome. It's like if you look at people for too long, it might make them uncomfortable. Or some people have experiences of somebody looking at them badly in childhood or whatever. So what we do in speaking circles, and what I teach people to do in my workshops and coaching, is to use a soft gaze and what we say is kind regard or kind eyes. So how you're looking at people makes a difference, right? So you're not like squinting or staring wide-eyed, but you just have a nice, soft, welcoming gaze. And when you're doing that, when you're speaking and also when you're listening, it can really develop the sense of trust between people. Like, I'm just here with you and you're here with me, and using this eye contact, we feel this connection. And so eye contact is really an important part of the speaking circles work. Speaking from the heart is another thing that I encourage people to do. There's a difference between speaking from your head and speaking from your heart, in my view and in my experience. Speaking from the head, there's a lot of facts or information or perspectives or ideas. We don't always connect from that place because maybe we don't all agree on the same things, or we don't understand when somebody's saying something, or we don't really care, right, about a certain fact or something. And so when we can drop into our heart space, and this can happen in any kind of setting, even business settings, right? So when I talk about being in your heart space, it's like sharing something that's meaningful to you, like why you have a passion for something, or what's so important to you about a certain thing. What's one of the values, or even when you share a story, there's emotion there. And we all human beings connect from emotions, because we all know what fear and love and anger and sadness and joy and all these, we know what those things feel like. So stories and sharing from your heart really helps connect people from an emotional place. So when you can drop down and start to share something a little bit more personal, it enhances the connection, because people start to relate to you from their heart, which has a lot more energy than our head. And so to me, it's like the most pure and profound way to interact with people is when you're sharing from your heart. And then you mentioned listening, and I can't overstate the importance of listening in any kind of setting, right? So one-on-one and group settings, listening is such a critical way of really having a strong sense of connection, but also being able to communicate, listen, trust, and develop this sort of relationship with people. Even if it's a 5-minute conversation with a person you meet at a party or a networking event, when you're really listening to that person and they can sense that you're listening, it sort of opens up something between you two. And the other aspect of listening that I find useful is listening to yourself, especially when you're in front of a group. So if you're doing a presentation, or let's say you're in front of a group in a speaking circle, or you're leading a meeting at work, or doing a toast or whatever it might be, there's an aspect of listening to yourself is like taking a moment, taking a breath, kind of arriving there and see, what do I feel called to share in this moment? Instead of like launching right into something and start speaking from your head, you want to listen to yourself and say, okay, what would I like to share with this group of people, or in this conversation with this one person right now? So taking a moment and not feeling like you have to talk the whole time is an important aspect of this work. And I think in any kind of interaction, it's helpful to listen to yourself. So that's also talks about dropping into your heart space and listening and taking your time and not feeling like you always have to talk with somebody. It's okay to be in silence for a few seconds with another person or a group of people, you know?
I love this. Thank you so much. And
Mhm.
I want to reiterate to you guys, and girls and ladies, the importance of this work. And to me, it has really been transformational. Like I do notice when I'm with my child and I'm in a listening space, when I'm, I have the self gaze and I'm available. And then I notice when I'm like, like in my head and I'm like thinking of my, my list of the day. So there is that part of being available, which has been really, really transformational for me and my personal relationships, as well as even as speaking, like, sometimes you have a speech plan and then you come with this idea and then suddenly you start relating to the audience and something else comes up and then you feel cold to share something else. And how flexible are we to give ourselves the opportunity to do that, or simply say, hey, what am I here to share, right? So right now, as we're having this conversation with Eric, is like, well, the reason why I even did this interview is because I believe that if we have better listening and communication, then we have better engagement. And if we have better engagement, we can make a like a higher difference in the world, because we can make a bigger difference in our personal lives, because if people around us feel heard, then they feel that they can come to us with their problems or questions. But then if they don't, then they feel kind of, not as close to us. So whether it's our audience that we're serving, our community we're serving, our intimate relationships, and also our leadership, is like, I see that we have this tendency of monologuing instead of including. And then when I've noticed that the leaders that I find really interesting are the ones that are actually kind of in a communication with the audience. And I feel that we're not told, like, that's not something we're taught to do. So even though maybe natural, because maybe that's how we naturally were created to be, I feel that it's not our natural way of relating, because that's not how we're told to relate. So we're told to prepare and do this and then relate. So I really invite you to consider participating in Eric's work and getting to know his work more deeply and see for yourself like how this work could be really transformational for you. And Eric, maybe you can share with everyone how they can find you, where they can find some of your workshops, so they can have an opportunity to experience it for themselves.
Sure. Thank you. So the name of my company is The Speakers Studio, and it's thespeakersstudio.com. And yeah, all my services and events that are there. So I do speaking circles, and because of the pandemic, all my work is done online now. So I do my speaking circles, I do workshops, I do coaching, I do training. Everything's online. So I've developed training programs for companies and groups in which we're communicating online. And speaking circles, we're using the same practices. Obviously, it's a little bit different. In a regular speaking circle, everybody's in the same physical room, and one person standing in front of a group of up to 10 people. And in my virtual version, in the virtual platform, the virtual speaking circle, everybody's in a separate location on their own screen, and yet we're still in the same virtual room, and we're using the same practices, relational presence. One of the things we teach is how to use the camera, so looking into the camera from time to time, so you're actually speaking with the whole group and they can all see your eyes. It's something you can't get in a live setting. Like if you're standing in front of a group of 10 people, only one person's going to see that you're looking at them. In the online version, when I'm looking into the camera, everybody can see my eyes. And so it can sort of change that dynamic. We teach people how to use the camera when you're speaking, but also when you're listening. In speaking circles, one person might look at a person on the screen and ask them or say their name, and the person to listen is going to go in the camera and give that person their eyes. So there's just a different dynamic online. And so the speaking circles and my workshops are all done in these virtual platforms, mostly on Zoom. And so, yeah, there's a calendar on my website where you can find out more. There's a coaching page. There's the training page on my services page where you can find out about the services that I offer. And in terms of my coaching, I work with speakers and authors and executives and entrepreneurs, managers, anybody who has to be in a public setting or who wants to get better speaking in front of a group or making a presentation or leading a meeting, that sort of thing. So, and I teach people how to do this in one-on-one coaching sessions and then group sessions as well. And so my workshops, people actually put content together, and they might actually put a presentation together and present to a group of people in the virtual platform and in the Zoom platform, where we're using these practices, and they're actually going through a presentation in this way. So yeah, so those are some of the ways that people can practice this. Eventually, when this pandemic is over, who knows when, we'll get back to live settings and doing a lot of live events and that sort of thing. But for now, this is what we're living with, and but there's a lot of benefit to this. And even after the pandemic, there's going to be a lot more things happening online. To me, it's a real privilege to be able to offer these practices to people literally all over the world. You can log in from Australia or Belgium or whatever, anywhere, coming into the same room, and we're using these practices, and people feel this amazing connection with people all over the world using these practices. So to me, it's only going to get bigger, using this work and using these platforms to connect and to get better speaking and just interacting with different people in a different way. So that's what speaking circles and relational presence gives people the opportunity to do.
Thank you so much, Eric, for being with me today. And we'll put a link in our comments so that people can access your information. So I really appreciate that you were here, and I hope that you get the opportunity to experience Eric's work and experience for yourself what relational presence is, so it enhances your life and career and relationships. So thanks a lot, Eric.
Yes, thank you, Virginia. I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you, and great questions. And thank you for telling others about this. And yeah, I know my job here, this is my purpose, is to help people tap into who they truly are and express themselves in an authentic and powerful way, one-on-one and in groups, virtually, in live settings. And to me, it can change the way we think about ourselves and the way we relate to people. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with people about this in our session today.
Oh, well, thank you, Eric. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope everybody else who's listening has an amazing day today too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.